You're on Team Human, Conscious Intervention in the Machine. An opportunity to change the program, optimized for leisure and pleasure instead of acquisition and accumulation. Because when the pyramid comes down, the higher you've climbed, the farther you fall. It's time to join the people on the ground. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and we're all on Team Human. Team Human is made possible by Everyone's Earth, the maker of Kobe dryer sheets and a growing line of sustainably sourced and manufactured products that are also completely 100% biodegradable. Yes, your wash cycle can now also be a part of the cycle of life. Moreover, in addition to supporting a company that's actually trying to fix the Procter & Gamble nightmare in which we've become enmeshed, you'll be supporting this show. And as a Team Human Insider, you can also get a 10% discount on Everyone's Earth by using the discount code RUSH10. How's that? So, my last monologue agitated a few people. I know it sounded a bit dark. I talked about how the uber wealthy believe the world as we know it is ending and that there won't be enough stuff to go around and that they need to take control of as much money and stuff and land as possible in order to position themselves for the end of days. And the way they do that is with an induced form of disaster capitalism, where they intentionally crash the economy in order to have some control over what remains. So the function of tariffs, for example, is to bankrupt businesses or even public services in order to privatize and then control them. So you stall imports, put the ports out of business, and then let a sovereign wealth fund purchase the ports. Or, as is happening right now, use tariffs to bankrupt soybean farmers who have to foreclose on their farms so that J.D. Vance's private equity firm can purchase the farmland as a distressed asset, then hire the farmers who used to own and work that land as sharecroppers. And what I explained was that the super wealthy, in collaboration with the current White House administration, they're engaged in a controlled demolition of this civilization because they realize the pyramid is collapsing and they don't have faith that there will be enough left over afterwards to feed and house everyone. That the best they can do is earn a lot of money, buy a lot of land, control an army, and get people accustomed to seeing that army deployed. That's what we're watching on TV and so on in our city streets, and why so many Americans voted against the current administration. It was a resounding, what the fuck? But I briefly mentioned something about AI and employment that I want to get into today. You see, it's not coincidence that AI is emerging at this same moment in our civilization's history. As Lewis Mumford once observed, new technologies are often less the cause of societal change than they are the result. Culture is like a standing wave, creating a vacuum or a readiness for a new medium or technology. So if we are really at the end of capitalism, the end of this 800 or 900 year process of abstraction, exploitation, and colonialism, then we would also necessarily be at the end of the era of employment. And I'll get to why I think that can ultimately be a good thing, but let's go through the scenario that's running through everyone's heads right now, and then find our ways there. Okay, AI is coming for our jobs. Not the super creative ones or the high-touch human ones, but the ones that maintain administrative control over everything. The majority of jobs. All the people in the mortgage departments, customer service, the insurance companies, the spreadsheet people, the PowerPoint people. Doomers say it's 90% of jobs, but let's even just say half of all office jobs are taken by AIs and half of blue-collar jobs are taken by robots. So the problem with that from a business perspective is that if you have no employees earning money out there in the world, then who will be your consumers? Right? Even Henry Ford, the racist anti-Semite, he understood that workers, even his assembly line employees, needed to earn enough money to be able to buy a Ford car. But how are AI billionaires going to continue to make money if there are no gainfully employed people capable of buying AI services from them, or at least buying the products from the companies that do purchase AI services? And this is the weird part. In their vision, it won't be by selling products to people, but selling things to the AIs themselves. It's a tricky idea, but once you kind of wrap your head around it, it all makes perverse sense. In today's economy, a small number of wealthy people and corporations employ us and sell to us. They don't really need to care what species we are, whether we're human or android, as long as we are producing value for their companies and then purchasing products from them. We all see how AIs can serve as workers, but when a tech investor explained to me how AIs will also become the new population of consumers, it didn't at first make sense. What do AIs need? And then I got it. Instead of retailers selling food and clothes and entertainment to human consumers, tech companies will be selling energy, memory, network access, and processing power to the AIs so they can do their jobs working as agent contractors for other corporations. The AIs, they'll earn crypto for completing their agentic tasks, and they'll spend it with technology companies who provide them the resources they need to function. As far as the owners of the companies are concerned, there's no difference between a population of human employees with whom you have no contact and a population of artificial employees with whom you have no contact. The only game that matters is the competition with the other big companies for the agent's business. The humans, they don't matter. So you end up with a small elite of big business owners living in luxury with a small number of human servants and a huge population of AIs doing all the work and consumption. And of course, in their vision of how this plays out, the rest of us humans, we become so disenfranchised, especially the ones who live in cities, that we'll need to be kept under control until we presumably die out. We're simply not needed. So, in both the good and the bad way, it becomes a vision for the end of employment and the colonialism of people. But let's consider the good way. For close to 1,000 years, growth-based capitalism has depended on real human beings doing work, while a small elite extracted value from that work at ever greater degrees of leverage. In order to get that leverage, capitalism abstracted again and again and again, each level of abstraction further removed from the people and places actually providing or creating the value. So there's a mineral in the ground, then there's a mining company that's taking the mineral out of the ground, and there's another company selling the mineral, and another company investing in the company selling the mineral. There's a stock company leveraging that investment. There's a derivative on the stock and a derivative on the derivative. Or there's a person who needs to live in a house, but they just rent from someone who owns the house. That's called the rentier. But then the rentier themselves has a mortgage on the house, which pays up to the bank, which pays up to another investor that owns the security, and so on and so on and so on. That's the pyramid of capitalism, with each investor or participant trying to move further up and away from the mineral or labor or living person up into the abstraction of pure financial instruments. And this pyramid simply grew too top-heavy to support itself. There's only so much you can leverage up there before it comes tumbling down. AI, at least theoretically in the minds of crazy tech billionaires who believe AGI is genuinely around the corner, it allows them to move on from employment, exploitation, and colonialism of people and simply level up. We humans and the planet, actually, we're discarded as capitalism moves up into a layer of total abstraction. It becomes the video game it was destined to become, with the humans represented by digital icons or NFTs instead of flesh and blood mammals. Our real world economy, it only has so much matter anyway. We can't scale as much as they need, so they leave us behind, while they move into a layer of total and absolute abstraction. All digital representations, themselves manufactured by digital agents, exchanging for digital currencies. It works because at least the AI agents value the crypto as much as the billionaires need them to. We're not needed. So instead of just 9 billion human customers, they get trillions of AI customers. The real world economy and the real world of people can't scale enough for them, so they leave it behind. But get this, what if this is a good thing? Right? What if it's akin to a slave population being released by the owners who no longer have use for them? We were not born to be their employees anyway. As I've explained here before, the whole concept of employment was invented as a way of preventing us from getting wealthy. In the late Middle Ages, right before this capitalism thing was invented, people in Europe were starting to do really well. They learned how to make and trade stuff at local markets. And they were doing so well that people were only working 2 or 3 days a week, and they got taller than at any time until the 1980s. That's when the aristocracy came up with the idea of a chartered monopoly and made it illegal for people to be in business for themselves. Instead, they had to become employees of one of the chartered companies or face a penalty of death. That's when we started working for companies instead of for ourselves, and we ended up in an economy built to favor those monopolies over the small businesses we used to have. So the end of this scheme is not necessarily a bad thing. We simply have to return to the real economy that isn't worth digital capitalism's attention. Human commodities like food and housing, they're no longer asset classes worthy of their time and attention, so there's no point in making growth-based markets for them. We can instead look at them as the commons-based resources they are. Optimize instead for distributed flourishing instead of extraction and profit. Yeah, there'll still be competition for energy, right? The AI economy would probably end up needing a bunch of nuclear power plants and better ways of dealing with all those spent fuel rods, if any of that AI scenario even becomes a reality. See, to me, it's less important what actually happens than that we take advantage of this moment of transition. The ultra-rich have accepted the end of capitalism, or at least the end of capitalism that depends on human labor and consumption for its survival. So it's time we accept we are no longer valuable to the capitalist extraction machine and begin to look instead at how we are valuable to one another. There's only 2 kinds of jobs anyway. There are the jobs people do to provide goods and services to each other, like farming, healing, teaching, building. And then the jobs we could call city jobs, maintaining corporate control over all that work. And that second category of work, that's the one that's going away. So all that's left for us humans to do is the real stuff. We've already got tons of books and models for how to execute a peer-to-peer circular economy scaled locally and optimized for flourishing over hoarding and stagnation. This is not rocket science, and these ways of living are already being modeled everywhere from the Mondragon cooperatives to Tamara in Portugal. If the wealthy people's AI fortress cities really do come to pass, we can still sell some excess meat and produce and music to them in exchange for the kinds of centralized currency we may need to get cell phones or AI tech, almost like trading with another civilization. But our world on the ground, it doesn't have to be the Mad Max Hunger Games underclass nightmare that the wealthy believe they're condemning us to. Or think of it this way. We built the net as a safe refuge for the counterculture. Corporations invaded the net, they took it over and turned it into an accelerationist nightmare. But they're ignoring the real world in the process. They believe they're leaving it behind for something abstract and better. And as far as I'm concerned, let them take the net as long as we can take back the real world. They get the net, and we'll have each other. So what we do right now is learn to get along with people rather than competing with them. We begin to explore mutuality, experiment with new models of collaboration and cooperation, restore the fabric of our local communities, get involved in local politics and civics and mutual aid, and model how fun this is for others to get interested and play along. People will engage this way with one another once they see how fun and alive and sexy it is to do. It's even more fulfilling than being validated by a ChatGPT. I know I'm sounding optimistic, and I understand this transition won't be easy. Reclaiming our land and resources and even our conscious awareness will involve considerable struggle. And learning to function in a horizontal society will require us to recall how to be human and compassionate. Our real job in the coming collapse is to figure out ways to make the landing as soft as possible for everyone. We need to find ways to welcome those who fall out of the matrix and reorient them to the real world. Do I really think the tech bros can create an economy where AIs serve as both the workers and consumers? No. But the fact that they believe this and are working actively toward it should give us all pause. They know that without an AI miracle, they've run out of room to keep moving up the Tower of Babel, the ziggurat, through successive layers of abstraction and growth. Pyramidal civilizations, like the one that's currently ending, are competitive. People strive for acquisition and accumulation. The more you have, the higher up the pyramid you go. That's not our game. It's not sustainable, and it's not even fun. The more you accumulate, the more brittle life becomes, the more everyone else is the enemy, and the more you need to accumulate to protect yourself and your family from them. Horizontal civilizations, the ones we inhabit after those pyramids collapse, they optimize instead for leisure. That's why the former peasants of medieval Europe only worked 2 or 3 days a week. Their money expired at the end of the day, so there was no point in accumulating it. Instead, they worked as little as possible in order to have as much time to love and make art and eat and play and fuck as they could get. It's so much easier, so much less extractive, and so much more fun. But it requires we value the social, the contact, the moment-to-moment experience of living, the desire to connect with other people rather than to find new ways to lord over them. The only way out is through, and the only way through is together. Thanks for being on Team Human. You can subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast player, get the ad-free version, access to our Discord server, and invitations to live events by becoming a supporter on Patreon or going to teamhuman.fm and clicking on support. You've been on Team Human, our last best hope for peeps. I want you to understand why these aren't just a silly product that's like a little bit better. It's the guy, Tom, who makes these dryer sheets, is thinking about the whole thing. So like the labor that makes it, how they grow the cotton, how they put this together. You can have like a nice, totally organic cotton t-shirt and it says organic and wonderful, but the manufacturing of that thing uses all these chemicals and all this waste and all this crap. They make these things with that perfect little cotton, but then they have a new process to fabricate the cotton so it doesn't put all that crap. And then when you get it, you get this thing that's like not bad. You just put it in the washer and use it as a dryer sheet, and you take it, you throw it away like with your friggin' compost. It's like and it biodegrades, and it's this kind of perfect cycle of life thing. And that's the difference between this and his change diapers that he's coming out with soon and all these other products, is that they're actually sort of end-to-end part of the regenerative cycle and not just, greenwashed, oh, this is good for the world.
That's beautiful.